Hello, my name is Father Edward Looney, and you are listening to the podcast How They Love Mary, a podcast that I hope will either be the beginning or the deepening of your Marian devotion. People who have been longtime followers of me through social media or through the podcast know that I kind of have eclectic interests, probably, especially when it comes to Catholicism. Sometimes I like featuring lesser known saints or things like that, just kind of bringing them to the forefront. Another thing that I like doing, especially with the podcast, with the different social media things that I do, is I especially like highlighting fellow Wisconsinites, their works, their projects. So on the podcast, I've had on a few times an author named Amanda Lauer, who lives in the greater Green Bay area. I've talked to other Wisconsinites. And there is another Wisconsinite that I've become familiar with through YouTube. He has a YouTube channel, releases a video every week. I kind of began to follow him because we both had a video about a particular place, the St. Philomena Grotto or Shrine, the National Shrine of St. Philomena in Briggsville, Wisconsin. So when I would click on my video, he would be a suggested video. And so like I watched his video and all of these things. So that's how I began to follow, because then I click subscribe. This is the YouTube click hole, is that you follow, so you watch a video, then you're like, oh, I want to look at more, and then you click subscribe, and then you see their content. So that's exactly what I did when it comes to Al McCauley and his project Fish on Fridays. I looked him up. I thought, you know what, this would be a great episode podcast for How They Love Mary to release also on YouTube, whatnot. He's doing YouTube stuff. I'm trying to do YouTube stuff. So I thought it would all work out. So I'm very happy that Al is joining me today. I found out that he is a religious ed coordinator, I hope I'm right, down in the Milwaukee area. And so I contacted him through their church website, through the contact form. He replied, we've been dialoguing since. And now he's here with us today on How They Love Mary. So thanks so much, Al, for joining me today.
I'm glad to be here, Father Edward. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it's wonderful to meet you. I've seen your face on YouTube, watched your stuff. We kind of have a different style of YouTubing, if you will. Like I'm all about capturing B-roll and then doing like a voiceover. And so I try to tell the story of the place through the voiceover, and then corresponding my voiceover to the images, on
Sure.
as I'm telling the story. You, from what I've noticed, it's kind of like, you're the, let's call it on-air personality. That's what we call it in the industry. And so you're talking, and then maybe you have some B-roll that follows behind you, or you're fancy, you have stuff on the side and things like that. So anyways, so it's been a joy just to watch the things you're doing. And your little apostolate, your media work that you're doing on YouTube is called Fish on Fridays, which is a very clever title. Of course, Catholics on Fridays during Lent will eat fish. It's obligatory. It's the other thing too that throughout the year Catholics are supposed to abstain as well throughout the year, or they could do another suitable form of penance according to the canon law. Sometimes I think it's just easier to do the fish on Fridays than try to figure out what another suitable penance is. So, but I think that's probably where your name came from. So, but can you maybe just say, how is it that you decided Fish on Fridays as you were going through kind of, maybe I'm sure you, your wife, other people, you were brainstorming, and that's the one you arrived at. So what was that process like in naming your channel?
Well, the name of the channel and the idea for the podcast or for the web series really came all at the same time. And it was one of those silver linings from the COVID experience. So I taught in high school, Pius XI High School, for 24 years. I taught theology and history. And I did a lot of adult formation at parishes around the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. And one of the parishes was St. Anthony on the Lake in Pewaukee, which is where I'm employed right now as the director of adult faith formation. And long story short, they asked if I'd be interested in that position. And 5 years later, I'm still in it and I'm loving it because I get to now work with adults. And I was about 9 months into the job when COVID hit. And I remember having a series, it was a Bible series with a lot of adults. And it was during Lent. It was in March. of 2020, and before we shut down. And there was a question that was asked of me about why do we eat fish on Fridays? That was one of the why Fridays, why fish? You know what? That was just the question, and it's a normal question. I'm assuming you've heard of that question in your priesthood, in your ministry.
Yeah, yeah. And then you get the answer, like people will be like, "Oh, well, the fish industry was struggling.
Oh my gosh, it
The
just drives me
Catholic Church
nuts.
created this, and blah 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 blah." And so I think there's actually a better answer than that.
Much better answer.
Historically, maybe it's true. I don't know. Maybe there's like, sometimes they say there's elements of truth in lots of things. So maybe there's
Right.
an element of truth there. But of course, we can spiritualize it a lot better than that.
Oh, absolutely. So what happened was when we were shut down, I looked for a way that I could still be in contact with and minister to the adults that I'd been serving. And so um, I made a connection with a former student of mine who is now a teacher in a Catholic school in her own right in Minnesota, and she has an expertise in the tech field that I don't. And so I told her about my idea, and she said, "Well, I'd be happy to help you with that." So her name is Emily Shimoleski, and she's been helping me ever since. So when you talk about the B-roll and having the little images that appear to my side and stuff, I supply the images to Emily, and she's the one who puts them on and gets the little logo in the corner. So I'd like to take credit for that, but it's not me. But when we named the series, that for some reason that question about why do we eat fish on Fridays just kind of stuck with me. I said that'd be probably a cool name for a webcast or a web series. So that was it. That was the genesis of it, if you will.
So before this, as I was getting ready for the show, I Google or not Googled, I YouTube. I put it in the YouTube search feature. I said, fish on Fridays, just to find your channel. And do you know that someone else started like a fish channel or something like that? Maybe releasing on Fridays or something. But it's like talking about records and old releases and things like that. So you're kind of like hidden within that. They came up first, actually, even though I subscribed to your channel. So I thought that was
Right.
interesting. But yeah, so it is unique. It's clever. It captures a Catholic identity. I think
Right.
someone that comes across Fish on Fridays, it's not like in your face Catholic, but I think it's enough if you know about Catholic practices during Lent, that then you're like, oh, this must be some sort of faith-based Catholic initiative. So what do you make of the fish throughout the year on Fridays? Kind of the other suitable penance. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a good practice to have. After Vatican II, it was a suitable penance is the key, not just fish, because there are a lot of more and more people, it seems, who are vegetarian, vegan, who may not eat fish for any number of. I'm sorry, who may not eat meat for any number of reasons. So eating fish isn't really a penance for them. It might be something I do it anyway, so there's no difference. So I think the stress on a suitable penance is the thing to do. Some kind of something that you can do to remind you a change in your prayer life, a change in your how you interact with the people you work with or live with. Those kind of penances. I always look to Saint Teresa of Lisieux. If you've watched enough of my episodes, I mention her a lot because she's my favorite. But finding those little ways to do God's will without seeking recognition or any kind of notoriety for it, that really appeals to me. So, but no, I'm all for it. I think that the idea of keeping penance in our front of our minds is important, not because woe is me, I'm a terrible person, as much as it is remembering with humility our relationship with God.
Yeah, definitely. So you started these videos then, as you mentioned, during the COVID years, as a way to do faith formation for your parish, and
Right.
it kind of evolved, right? So you probably have people like me that discover it by accident. So where do you get your ideas for the things that you decide to feature?
Well, there's thousands of saints, so you'll never run out. That's one thing. I love, like you said at the beginning, I love talking about saints, especially saints. If somebody will ask me, "Hey, have you ever heard of Saint so and so?" And if I don't know them or know very little about them, it's just the nature of how I've always been that I want to know, and so I will research, I will learn, I will read, and then I will present it so other people know who that person is. Um, there's no shortage of church teachings either, but as you can imagine, I get people all the time who will say to me, "Hey, have you ever done an episode on fill in the blank?" And it's like, "No, I haven't. I'm going to consider that." So there's a lot of different sources for for the topics that we cover.
Yeah. So as you've done these, and I know we were talking, I think you're coming up with your 200th episode
Yes,
sometime soon. So,
that's
that's
crazy.
exciting.
Yeah.
And it shows, first of all, your commitment to continuing to do this, and so forth. So, in the 200 episodes, like, what are some of the ones that really stand out to you that you're like, I was really, maybe one that you're really proud of, one that you're happy you did? I don't know. Just share a few episodes that you kind of delighted in.
Well, before I answer that, let me just say my mother-in-law watches, pardon the pun, watches them religiously. And if nobody ever watches them but my mother-in-law, I'm going to keep making them for her. So, um, but the one I'm most proud of is going to sound really strange. Let me back up. The one I'm most proud of is, but that's a tough question because there are a lot that I'm very happy about. I love the Christmas messages. I think those every year I do a Christmas message. Um, I think the thing I'm most proud of isn't really an episode as much as it is the collaborative nature of Fish on Fridays. What people see is my face, but it's Emily Shimoleski who puts it all together to make it look good. If you watch an episode, any episode, the little graphic of the fish and the logo was made by a man named Andy Bernier. He was a former colleague of mine, an art teacher at Pius. He is a graphic artist. I reached out to him. The music you hear at the beginning, the intro and the outro, Ode to Joy, is a jazzy version of Ode to Joy. A former student of mine, Augie Haas, who lives in New York, he's a professional musician, a trumpet player. I texted him, called him, and I said, hey, would you give me a 10-second intro to Ode to Joy? Well, he got his band together and they did an arrangement, a 45-second arrangement. It's just awesome. So I'm very proud of the fact that all of these relationships, none of us work in a bubble. None of us work in a vacuum. We all do God's work in communion. And I'm reminded of that literally every time I start an episode. I think this is not just about Al's show. It's about all of us. But the episode that sticks out to me is going to sound strange to you. If you look behind me on the shelf, there's a bottle of Jägermeister. If there's one episode I get comments on about more than any other, by far, it's the question about why I have a bottle of Jägermeister behind me. Now, our son-in-law Dominic, is a hunter, third generation hunter. It's part of the culture of their family, and he had mentioned something about the patron saint of hunters, and I didn't know who that was. So I did some research at St. Hubert, and I looked up about St. Hubert. And the story, very briefly, is that St. Hubert he skipped Good Friday services to go hunting. And as he was out hunting, he sees this stag, a prize stag that he is going to bag. And as he's about to shoot, he sees the crucifix glowing in between the antlers of the stag. And it reminds him of the priority that he's missing out on by not going to services. And he gives up his life of frivolous life, and he goes back to church. Now, what's interesting about that is Jägermeister, which is a booze, a type of, I don't even know what you call it, what kind of booze it is, but it's some kind of alcohol. They have that logo of the stag with the cross. That's their logo. And Jägermeister means master hunter. And so on the episode, I've never tasted Jägermeister in my life, but on the episode, I went to a liquor store. I found a bottle so I could hold up the bottle and show the logo on the episode. And then at the end, I did a shot of it just to try it. And with all due respect to the Jägermeister people, it was awful. I hated it, but I capped it and I put it back on the shelf there just to remind myself that I did it. But I can't tell you how many people will watch. It'll come up to me and say, is that a bottle of Jägermeister on your shelf? Why do you have that on a Catholic web series? So there you go. It's always a chance to evangelize and tell about St. Hubert.
Yeah, is that interesting? And I was in Canterbury in England a few months ago now. And as I was walking the cathedral, there was this image, and so I'm going to add to St. Hubert, but this is kind of an obscure one. I was going to make a post about this during deer hunting, and then I never got to it. So it kind of like goes on the list of things for next year or whatever, which is interesting because like I record footage so often. Like this year, I plan on doing a video about Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico. Well, I went there last July, so it would have been just better for me to do footage from Our Lady of Guadalupe, release it, talk about it last year. But like life is busy, I didn't get to it, and then I just sit on it. I'm like, oh, we'll just do it next year. So it's just kind of funny how some of those things happen. But So in Canterbury, the legend of Saint Eustace.
Right.
So painted about. So this is a painting, but there's Saint Eustace, which I think is different than Hubert. But
Yep.
reading from the bottom, the story of Saint Eustace and his family from the 2nd century is illustrated. It begins with his conversion, and a vision of the crucified Jesus and the antlers of a
Right.
hunted stag. So Saint Eustace had the same experience as Saint Hubert. So then, if you begin to think about it, how many other individuals that were hunters maybe had this encounter of Christ? So
Right.
it's not isolated. Now,
Correct.
if you're a skeptic, if you reject faith and Christianity and want to try to say all this is for naught, well, maybe you would say, well, St. Hubert made up his story because he knew the story of St. Eustace, and St. Hubert, that really didn't happen to him. But you know what? St. Hubert ended up becoming a priest. He ended up becoming a bishop.
Right.
His life was completely changed. So you can't say that he didn't see the crucified Jesus. But it's interesting, because when I saw that in Canterbury, I just thought to myself, I'm like, wow, just to realize God did this once in the 2nd century. He probably did it so many other times too. So
Oh,
as you
absolutely.
do these things, you yourself learn.
Oh, absolutely. Fantastically. I knew the story of Eustace, but my son-in-law mentioned Hubert by name. That's why I focused on him and his story.
Yeah,
But,
of
you know,
course, he's the most popular one.
correct. And to your point, God didn't gift just one person with the stigmata. It's grace given to different people in different times for a reason. So just because it's done once doesn't mean it can't be done again. If God communicates to a hunter in this way, that's God's will, So
Yeah, so you are a content creator. I'm a content creator. And I think sometimes when we do this content creation, I don't know your method. For me, it's a Google Doc where I just have a running list of things that I'd be interested in maybe doing. And then when I secure stuff, I put it there or whatever. So my method, a Google Doc in terms of content creation. But I think sometimes too, as we're thinking about, well, what should I be doing? What should I create next? What could I share? And the same goes for a podcast. Like I'm always looking for podcast guests. That's why I'm honored that you're joining me for what began as an audio podcast, and now we're releasing the video interview along with it on YouTube. But for How They Love Mary, and so in terms of content creation, I think that we can have series. Like we're like, oh, maybe I should just do a series on this. And so going through your channel, I saw at one point you did kind of maybe an art history or art reflection where you took some different paintings from Caravaggio and you kind of taught about them. So that was one of the series. But I'm just curious, do you have other series or kind of like, oh, I'm going to do these type of videos for a few weeks just to see what happens with them?
um, yes, really, there's not a overall plan other than if I don't have a specific episode in mind, I try to coincide with feast days that I can release. So last Friday, we released an episode about St. John of Damascus, who was a doctor of the church, and he was a proponent of the use of icons for praying. His feast day is December 4th. So we dropped it the Friday before so that it would kind of coincide closely with his feast day. But we do a lot of art. I teach in my work, I teach using art, not just Caravaggio, although he's my absolute favorite. I do a lot of different, use a lot of different art to communicate, to affirm faith and to teach faith. And so there are a lot of episodes that I will sprinkle in. And oftentimes, if I get two or three pieces, I'll just do two or three in a row. The other series that I've done is like, for instance, I did a two-parter on the apostles. You can't fit all that in one episode. I did a two-parter on Vatican II, those kinds of things. So, and I'll mention it. I'll say, just so you know, this is the first of two parts. Next week, I'll release that. Now, a year later, people can watch them in whatever order they'd like to. But that was the intention of making them. I try to stay close to the liturgical calendar if I can, but short of that, I follow up with ideas that are either given to me or something that I come up with. But the difference between a web series and a podcast is a podcast can be more timely. So if this was a podcast that I had and somebody said, can you do an episode about angels? I'm just throwing that out there. I could do that on the fly and say the next episode, maybe I will do that. Next conversation. With a web series, and because I have somebody who helps me produce this, I have to work ahead a few episodes. So I'll try to do, I will try to film 3 or 4 episodes ahead and get them to, thank God for technology, I'll get them to Emily, who lives in Minnesota, and she will do her magic. And then we can drop them on the given Friday that we've scheduled. So
You only release on Friday. You don't put out content any other day of the week.
that's correct. Fish on Fridays. I figured let's be consistent. So
Definitely. Yeah. So, you mentioned about John Damascene, for example. So kind of in your own YouTubing then, as you're a YouTuber and web series content creator, etc. Like, it's good that you dropped it on a Friday before John Damascene,
right.
because now people, they go to mass on, December 3rd, and they'll be like, oh, John Damascene, I wonder if, my priest didn't talk much about him, and what are they going to do? Well, they might go to YouTube and they might type in John Damascene, and then you're going to show up maybe, because you're a more recently released video. You're going to be at the top, and people are going to watch it. So in terms of metrics, that might even be helping you if you're doing something in advance of it.
Sure. Now, there are exceptions to that. So, for instance, this Friday, we'll be dropping the episode about St. Ambrose. Well, his feast day is on the 7th. The 8th is the Immaculate Conception. And I did an episode on the Immaculate Conception. It was one of the first we did, actually. But so sometimes it doesn't work perfectly, but it's very close still to the feast day of St. Ambrose. So, but yeah, I always try to do it a few days ahead if I can, because I just think it gives time for people, like you said, to reflect prior to Mass, whatever the case is. November was an interesting month because we had so many feast days. Our Lady of Cabejo, we had Our Lady of Miraculous Medal, we had the visionary of that, Catherine Labouré, on the 27th to 28th, respectively. So those I dropped early in November, so it give people plenty of time to prepare, if you will. That's my hope. Whether or not they do, I don't know. But give people a chance to, like you said, have a reflective moment about these people or about these events prior to the celebration of them. I think that's all good.
So in my experience of like YouTubing and posting videos, things like that, like there are some that I'm just super surprised took off. Like there are some where I'm like, oh, I think this will do really, really well. And, right, it doesn't get the hits that I wanted to get. And then there's others where it's like, I look at it, I'm like, I can't believe these numbers, whether it's, so I had this viral video, this is kind of just an aside, but I had this viral video on Facebook. I released it on Facebook, and it was about an event that happened at a local place down the road from me. They basically built a turkey piñata and blew it up with dynamite. Okay. And so I did a little video telling the story of that event, and when I went to it, I'm like, oh, this is stupid enough. I'll take some footage, I'll put it together as a little video. I released it in like the darkness of the night because I'm like, oh, I don't know if my followers will really like this, but I thought it was cool, so I'm gonna just release this. Well, the next day it's got thousands upon thousands of views. A week later, it had 125,000
wow.
views. And like, it had 1,000+ shares, and so for me, I'm like, here I am, I make videos about confession and the saints, and those get 300 views. And here is a turkey being blown up by dynamite, and it's gotten 150,000 views. But so that was the aside. Let me go back to the spiritual now. So there was, sometimes I do movie interviews with talent, or I'll do a movie review. So this was an interview that I did with the story behind the movie, really, like the person who inspired the story. I did the interview. I loved the movie. I thought it was great. I told everybody they should go see it. I had some friends go see it. They're like, every time you recommend a movie to us, you always blow us away with the movie. So they went, saw it. So I did this interview. Well, it's one of my highest grossing views in terms of interviews. I did. And then sometimes there's things that happen by happen chance. Like I interviewed the Benedictine Sisters of Mary, Queen of Apostles, about their new children's book. It was for the podcast, How They Love Mary. I released the video, and the day after I released everything, that was when the news broke. Their founder was incorrupt. They thought they moved her body, and so So that video, because everybody was typing in Benedict and Sisters of Mary, lots of views, again, thousands of views on that interview. So it's interesting to me that sometimes the things that you just are doing and you don't think they're going to amount to much, well, then they end up surprising you. So I guess that was a long story to get to the question of, do you have some videos like that where you're like, why is it that this video has gotten so many views as compared to other videos? Like, is there a video that you did that took off that you're like, I don't know why it did?
Yeah, there is. I'm blown away by, like I said before, about the question about the Jägermeister. I think that's funny to me. It tells me that they're maybe look more interested in what's behind me than what I'm saying. But I don't know how many views I even have on my episodes. Honestly, I don't look at that. I don't have no clue about it. Like I said, if my mother-in-law keeps watching, I'm going to keep producing. So I don't know if we have hundreds or thousands or tens. I don't know, honestly. I suppose I could find that out easily enough, but I just,
Sure.
but we did an episode a while ago, a little over a year ago, I think, about a young lady named Czeslawa Kawoka, who was murdered as a Catholic Polish young lady, young teenager in Auschwitz in 1943. And the reason she came to mind was Emily, my producer, my friend and colleague, sent me a picture of her. It was, for lack of a better description, like a mugshot that was taken.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman who was a Jewish photographer at Auschwitz who was forced to take pictures of people before they were executed. And it's like a mugshot, profile, front, etc. And this young lady, you could tell she had been crying. Her face was swollen and marked up, and she was Polish. She couldn't understand the German commandant's commands. And so it was a woman, a female guard, roughed her up. Well, she had these piercing blue eyes, and he remembered her. Fast forward several decades, she was killed. She was murdered. And several decades later, there's a Brazilian artist, a woman who specializes in colorizing photographs. And she's colorized photographs of the likes of Mark Twain and Abraham Lincoln and George Custer and people of that nature. Well, she found these photographs, or these photographs were discovered after the Holocaust had ended, and she colorized Cheslava's picture, and it's nothing short of haunting. And I used the episode to talk about, in a way, martyrdom, to talk about man's inhumanity to man, and that this young Catholic woman was murdered. In the it wasn't just Jewish people. Obviously, the majority were Jewish people in the Holocaust, but that one has resonated with a lot of people. Again, I have no idea how many people have watched it in terms of numbers. I honestly can't tell you that, but I do know that a lot of people have commented on it, and it's one of those episodes that Emily tells me people keep checking out. So when you put something on YouTube, you tag it, you put Holocaust, World War II, whatever else, and so those tags are there. So if there's a student somewhere who is doing a research paper on the Holocaust and types it in, that's going to be one of the things that they see. And maybe it's something they click on. And you know what? If people are learning about that and it somehow can help to educate people about what that, a little slice of what the Holocaust was, to humanize it, we get lost in the 6 million number. But here's a real person who really lived that you can get to know. To me, that's pretty profound. So that would be my long answer to your question.
So that episode or that edition of Fish on Fridays is in your top 10. It is your
Oh,
number 6, your
okay.
sixth highest grossing. Let me
Okay.
just, maybe you'll be surprised by this. I just went to your channel. I typed in, or I went to your videos, and then you can sort it. I can sort it by latest, popular, or oldest. Here's
Huh.
your top 10.
Okay.
Walking tour of the National Shrine Grotto of Our Lady of Lourdes.
Is this number 1 or number 10?
For one.
Number 1. Have you ever been there? It's in
I
Emmitsburg.
have been, yeah. And I have been,
Beautiful.
I've taken footage there, and you and I both ignored the sign that said no photographer, like no professional. I was like, oh, I'm just an amateur or something. That's over in Emmitsburg. Yeah, I gave a talk
Yes.
over in Baltimore for the Legatus,
Okay.
and I went to another one that's going to be in your top 10. I went to the Shrine of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah.
okay. On the road of the National Shrine of, or on the road. So that must have been like kind of a series You did the walking tour. You do on the road. So on the road at the National Shrine of Saint Philomena is your number two.
Wow.
Uh-oh. Okay. So it started playing. Number three, Caravaggio's Saint Jerome writing.
Yeah.
That's your third.
Okay.
We'll do your top 10 just for so you know.
Okay. All right.
Number four is walking tour of the National Shrine of Saint Elizabeth Ann Seton. So the
See,
walking tours are
there's a theme here. The walking tours aren't a series, but if I know I'm going someplace, my wife or a friend of mine, someone will film me at these locations. But clearly, those are the ones people like.
This one will be funny, and this happens a lot, you know. So your number five is Welcome to Fish on Fridays. So that was the very first one you did. Number six is Czeslawa Kowalka, or the one you just.
Czeslawa Kavoka. Mm-hmm. That's the one I was just talking about.
Yep. So number seven is a poor friar who prays. A poor friar who prays. So that's
Padre Pio.
Your number seven is Saint Florian, the patron saint of firefighters.
Mm.
Number eight is Our Lady of Lavang.
Yeah.
Number nine is On Location at the National Shrine of Saint Therese of Lisieux.
Another beautiful place.
10 is Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, released just 1 month ago. Yes. So a video from 1 month ago is in your top 10.
Wow.
A lot of times when you do like the top 10, it's because you have a lot of history. So then
sure.
Some of those videos were from 2 or 3 years ago, but that's because you've had 2 years of people searching and finding, and watching. So that's how that happens. So that's your top 10. I'm curious, like, what was your experience like at Briggsville? What do you think of that? You know, the National Shrine of Saint Philomena. I did an episode on this podcast, just the audio version, with the lady that's kind of the caretaker of it.
Sure.
It's kind of nice just to hear her story. But what was your thoughts about that place?
Well, in full transparency, my wife and I and our children were on vacation in Wisconsin Dells, and somebody had mentioned it. It was like an afterthought kind of a thing, and I'd never heard of it. So I looked it up on my phone and I found it, and I said to my wife, "Can we go find it? And if it's something I can film, would you film me?" And so we went there, and we went into the church. We looked everywhere, tried to call. There was a contact number there. As you know, it's not a shrine per se, as much as a road stop attraction kind of a thing. But there was nobody there. So I couldn't interview anybody. But, it was one of those episodes where we just kind of like, let's film and do what happened. Take it from where it is. And I liked it. But if there's one episode of all the ones we've done that I want to do another one in addition to, like maybe here, is about the life of St. Philomena a bit more in depth, or just to recapture it, because she's one of those wonder worker saints that I don't think that people might not know enough about. And she's fascinating to me. And you can always tell when a saint is important when other saints are pointing to that saint. Saint John Vianney loved her. Saint Pius X loved her. And, that tells me something about Philomena that I just, not that that episode was bad. I don't think it was. I just think that I wish there was more I could do, another one I could do about her, because I'm just so enamored with, her impact. But that was if there was one episode that was really organic, it was kind of like we showed up, we saw it, it's like, here, film me. And my wife just filmed me, and we just went with it. So it was, I love the little statue there. It's got all the symbols. So you could tell the story from the symbols, from the artwork. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful little shrine. I have some friends that live in Wisconsin Dells, so I always kind of go out of my way to visit there, kind of because it's one of those like Catholic guilt things probably, but it's like, I should do this. Like, there are things you should just do. Like, if there's a shrine, you should just go to it. That's my approach. That's my thought. So they
have signs all over the place pointing to it, so they're very proud of it.
So I just happen to show up there, once a year or whatever. It's not my intention to go on pilgrimage, but I was like, I should pray. And kind of my thought there is like, God has something in store for me, even if I don't know what it is, but I must go in order to receive whatever it is that God wants to give me. So that's why I would go to a place like that. So
right. Cast your nets wide. Keep doing it. Yep.
Yeah, so that's great. Now, I'm curious too. This is like a behind the scenes moment for you and I. Like, how many takes does it take you to do one of these things?
Um, I've gotten better.
Yeah.
In the early episodes, it would take 2 or 3 takes. I would start and then I would stop the video and then I would pick it up again and then the editing process would blur them together, if you will, or blend them together. Um, Recently, it's been a lot easier. There's you I'm sure you can relate to this. You get little tricks in terms of how to get through in one take. It doesn't mean I don't have my share of bloopers. Sometimes, in fact, people don't watch through the credits. At the end of the credits, sometimes Emily will tack on a blooper or two.
Oh,
If you go to the episode, for instance, on Our Lady, the walking tour of Our Lady of Guadalupe in La Crosse, at the end, there's any number of bloopers. So, it's fun, and that's okay. That's all part of it. So that's what happens. I'm assuming, like I said, I'm assuming you have the same kind of.
yeah. So a lot of my stuff, like right now, we're in the Christmas season. I decided to try to do 24, 25 videos on Christmas movies and just watching a Christmas movie and giving a take on it. Like, what did this tell me about God? Or, I just did one on Candy Cane Lane and I posted the video. Someone gave a comment like, it's not a Christian friendly movie.
Oh,
I'm like, okay, I get it. Like I at the very end, I did say like these are two things like I was kind of disturbed by as a believer, right? But I want to know, did I miss something else? Whatever. But like in Candy Cane Lane, like just to say, well, they talk about the true meaning of Christmas, but they don't understand what the true meaning of Christmas is. It's the secular true meaning of Christmas. Like it's
right.
values, it's like family or whatever, but it's not the true meaning of Christmas, which is Jesus. So that was my take on Candy Cane Lane. Like you could talk about these things, but you're not actually getting to them.
Correct.
So like I'll do videos like that, like right now. So I'm doing this little series. So, but that'll take me. Sometimes it'll take me 6 tries to do it all in one take, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, I'm at minute 3, and I just had the little oops, and
Yeah.
so I just redo it and whatnot.
Yeah.
So if you go on my phone, then you'll see. I'll delete them eventually, but you'll see like the 7 takes it took me to get to the content.
I can totally relate. I can completely relate to that. Your point about watching Christmas movies is a good one. We're I tell people all the time at the parish where we're in the world but not of the world. We need to, the ship is not the idea that we should critique the culture and look at it through the lens of our faith. That's really important. So even if it's not ostensibly or overtly Catholic or Christian, we can still see it through that lens. That's what I try to do with art. There'll be episodes coming up where there are pieces of art that don't look anything but secular pieces of art, and yet there is definitely a Catholic view to it. So that's I think that's important that we do that.
Well, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, it's been so wonderful to talk, to learn more about Fish on Fridays, which is your YouTube channel, kind of the things that inspire you to do the videos, how you go about it, and so that's one of my objectives, as I do this episode, is just to share what you're doing with other people because I like spotlighting different Catholic creators and content makers and we all have something to add to the mystical body of Christ. So, there are some people out there that might look at it and be like, well, no, why would you promote somebody else? Because if they're watching Al McCauley's Fish on Fridays, well, then they might not watch you. But to me, it's like, well, he has something to offer, maybe, and he fills up a lacuna or a void that I don't cover, and so that's why I am all about sharing Catholic creators with people. And yeah, I fell in love with what you're doing. And when I found out you're a Wisconsinite and all these things, I'm like, this would be a good episode, I think. And for me, I think, it's kind of enlivening to speak to someone else that is kind of doing the other kind of, low key, if you will. Like, we're not like a Bishop Barron that has,
Yeah, yeah,
you
right.
have more people helping you than I have helping me. But, so it's like, we're kind of like low key production. And so it's just nice to kind of maybe inspire each other in the work that we're doing.
I appreciate it. I'm very grateful for the time, and I've been doing research on you and your books and your apostolate with Mary. And, we've done several episodes on Mary because you can't go wrong, boy, talking about Mary, that's for sure. So, but I appreciate the time and the highlight, and I will do whatever I can to return the favor, to point people in your direction as well. Two things can be true at the same time. You have a reason for your apostolate as well as I do. And so let's build each other up. It's not competition, it's building up.
Yeah, that's right. And I have a feeling that we might have a collaboration coming out together sometime in 2024.
That would be great. I would really enjoy that.
And maybe just one last thing, just share about, how they can find you on the internet. I don't know if you just have YouTube, maybe you put it on Facebook too or whatever. So how can people actually find the content that we have just talked about for the last 45 minutes?
Well, yes, I do have we have the YouTube page, of course, Fish on Fridays with Al McCauley. We have Facebook. We're on Facebook, same name, Fish on Fridays. And we have a presence on Twitter as well. That would be under my Twitter handle, which is Punman Al, Punman Al, Punman Al. That's it. I'm not in Instagram or the other things. Those are the only ones I really know of, and I can navigate successfully. So, but that's where they can find me. And I hope that people will look and watch the videos.
Yeah. You might be surprised by this, but I would bet you would be able to get some good traction on Instagram, maybe. So, yeah. And then so I do Instagram just to share the life of a priest, etc. But when I do a travel video, so for me, my travel content, I brand it as Father Edward Visits. And so, when like, I think we're recording this the week of the Immaculate Conception. So I believe I'm going to do a video on the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. I think I have enough footage of the place that I could piece that together for that day. And so like, I'll just go to OpenAI, this is using artificial intelligence, but I'll just say, create me hashtags for a Catholic travel video about the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Washington, D.C. And it'll give me like 25 hashtags that I use. And I don't know if they're effective hashtags or whatever. I don't know if other people are using them, but I've noticed that they help in terms of viewership and all that stuff. So I'll put that up on Instagram just to see what'll happen with it. So I wonder if maybe you could get some traction on Instagram. Yeah, but it's good, I think, to discover your own platform, what you're good at, the ones you want to use. Like, people tell me all the time, you should be on TikTok. And I'm like, no, yeah. I have absolutely zero interest on being on TikTok. And I don't have time to learn it. I don't want to figure it out. I'm just comfortable. Like, I'm a point and shoot guy. So, I don't want to have to edit. I don't know what all goes into it. But I don't know. Maybe if you're interested, it could be another avenue to explore in the future.
I appreciate that. One of the things that's been interesting is there have been any number of teachers who have used the content. So I'm, 5-10 minute videos to start a lesson on a school or on a Friday in a classroom for theology. I think it's, if that's helpful, that's great. That's a surprise, but I'm very happy that that's one of the ways it's being used. So yeah, I'll check into Instagram though. I agree with you though. I have zero interest in TikTok, nothing at all to do with that, but I'll look into the Instagram thing. It's a good idea.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you said you had a Facebook page or not for so you could actually post it on Instagram and cross post it to Facebook. So you could actually be posting to both of them at the same time. So it's just a little insider information.
Appreciate that. I'll look into that. That's for sure.
People listening along. So, well, great. Well, very good. So I'll be sure to link to everything in the show notes so they can find you on all the platforms that you are currently available on, and that they can have their serving of Fish on Fridays with you, Al McCauley. So thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Father Edward.